manager in Wayne County for about 10 years. And before that, I was a CPS supervisor. And then before that, I think at one point I held the record. I don't know if I still do, but I was a CPS worker for 17 years. So for some of you who are brand new to the field, hopefully I can offer some tips on child safety. Before that, I was a caseworker. At the time I did it, which I'm going to really date myself, it was called assistance payments worker. And I did that for about 6 or 7 years. And I can honestly say I did it in the recession, and it was, I will say, a horrible experience. For those of, I see some of my students on this meeting today, and I'm sorry if I'm going to repeat some of my stories, but I think some of them are good. I decided to leave assistance payments. I used to sit by a veteran, and no disrespect to veterans, but a family came in around Thanksgiving and said, this was during the recession, and it was a father raising his children. And he said, if you don't approve my food stamps, my family's gonna have to eat hamburger for Thanksgiving. And my coworker, the veteran, who I will say, I can't diagnose at that time, but I will now say he was certifiably crazy, looked at him and said, well, you have a dog, don't you? And the guy looked at him and he said, well, shoot the dog. You can have dog for Thanksgiving. And I thought, oh my God, I can't do this. So that's when I decided I'm in the wrong work for the state, and I went to child welfare. And it was a great moment in my life to go and work with families, because I really truly believe that that was my calling. So today I'm going to talk about child safety and explore the importance of family preservation. Hopefully you can all see my PowerPoint. I am going to read some things just so that you can be with me. And like I said, I hope to bring a message of hope. I'm not here to beat you up. I do stay in contact with people, and I know that things are difficult. And in my career of 39 years with the state, many times it has been difficult. So I hope just to offer you hope and some strategies in working with families, and maybe just to offer some of my educational experiences too. And then hopefully we can encourage each other. So I'm going to talk about the importance of working with families as collaborative partners. We're going to, of course, talk about strengths, because my students know that's one of the highlights of things I talk about in the classroom. And of course, I'm going to talk about the unnecessary separation of children from their families. And then we're going to talk a little bit about motivational interviewing. And I will just say, that over the years, I know the state brings in different kinds of policies, and we're not always in agreement with them. When I was a worker, we brought in solution focused interviewing, and the big thing was the miracle question. And many of us laughed and thought it was crazy. But I can now say, because I teach at Wayne State, and I teach solution focused interviewing, which is very ironic, but even if you take bits and pieces of what I'm going to be talking about and just use some of these strategies with families, I think you will have better outcomes with families. So I hope that all makes sense, and we'll go ahead and get started. So I kind of have already gone over the objectives, and my outcome, I hope, finally, is that your practice will be improved and we'll be able to preserve families, because ultimately that's what we want to happen. So I know, hopefully I'm not that computer savvy, so I can't really look at the chat, but I know we have CPS workers and supervisors, foster care workers, and supervisors, and family preservation specialists. Are there any other people that I'm missing that are participating today?
School social worker.
Oh, okay, wonderful. I love school social workers. So I actually am, and I think I recognize your name. Did you used to work at the state, Monica? I don't, did you used to be a CPS worker?
No, I work for Mount Clemens Schools.
Okay, well, welcome. I love school social workers. I actually supervise interns at Wayne State that are studying to be school social workers. So welcome.
Yes,
We need
thank
school
you.
social workers. They are our lifeline for CPS and foster care. So welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so did I miss, do we have any other professionals with us? Okay, well, welcome everyone. And I have to tell you one funny story. Those of you who are in CPS especially, hopefully you'll be able to laugh about this. I won't name the person, but most of you know that the last year that I was with the state, I got this big surprise when the district manager called me in and said that I was being transferred to North Central. It wasn't really my choice, but I had to go there for, I don't know, a variety of reasons. And so there was, as you know, if you work with the state, there's always big gossip. In fact, most people knew I was going before I knew I was going. And one male supervisor, I won't name him, but got everybody all worked up over at North Central that I was a by the books person and very tough, and I was going to fire everybody, blah, blah, blah. And they had a pet name for me, which was my pet name. I don't even think I knew it at the time, but they called me Killer Keller, and they mimicked me with guns, policy on one hand, and I don't know, discipline on the other. And so when I left the state, I thought I could just like put that behind me and just be nice Nancy Keller, you know, passionate about child welfare and passionate about keeping kids safe and just take that into the classroom. But lo and behold, this year, when I was out doing my faculty field visits, I went to Covenant House, and people there started kind of like teasing me, saying, well, we hear your name is not Miss Keller, we hear your name is Killer Keller, because one of the interns there actually had worked at North Central and told them all the stories about my nickname. And so I'm going to say, in the spirit of ethics today, yes, I do claim that. And yes, I am very passionate about children. I hope I'm remembered for being fair, but I am remembered. I do claim it. I am passionate about kids and policy. And I think if we talk about family preservation and keeping children safe, we have to look at our policy. So I hope I do not disappoint you that first I'm going to look at policy, and I'm going to just do a little review of CPS policy and foster care policy, because I think that's where we have to start with family preservation. And for those of you who are not with the agency, this is just a quick little refresher. So Children's Protective Services policy is based on the conviction that children are, is based on the conviction that the protection of children is primarily the responsibility of parents. And I think sometimes in CPS we forget that. When parents and other responsible adults fail and children are harmed or at sufficient risk to warrant CPS intervention, CPS intervenes to safeguard the rights and the welfare of children whose families are unable or unwilling to do so. So I know for those of you who are with the agency, it doesn't surprise anybody that like 75% of our cases are denied because we don't find evidence. Now with foster care, the philosophy of the program is the purpose of Child and Family Services is to provide continuity, consistency, and permanency in a family setting for the growing child. Permanency planning and follow through are the key to eliminating negative effects of separation from parents and family while in a temporary foster care. Foster care must be viewed as a short-term solution to an emergency situation, and permanency planning must continue throughout the youth's placement and care. The foster care program for children provides placement and supervision for children who have been abused and or neglected and cannot remain in their family homes because they would be at risk of further harm. Services must be focused on resolving the problems which necessitated removal. Children have a right to a stable home environment that provides for their safety, nurtures their development, and promotes a sense of well-being. Removal of children from their families occurs only when families are absent or unwilling unable or unwilling to provide minimally acceptable care. Efforts to reunify must begin immediately after removal. Permanent arrangements must be initiated when reunification efforts are unsuccessful or when such efforts would place a child at risk. And then, of course, we all know relative care is a key to substantially reducing the negative effects of removal. Now, I know that for the most part, a lot of people do not have time to go back and look at policy. And really, you look at policy mostly when you're in the 9-week training. But I think it's helpful to go back and look at policies so we remember really what we're all about. And especially as new workers, I think when you first start practicing and investigating, you get a little bit of power in your head. And you have to remember that we're not all about just taking everybody's kids. We're really about working with families. And I'll just caution, and I mean no respect to people who go into child welfare who have the criminal justice background. You do go into child welfare with that criminal justice background, and that does give you the investigative skills, but we also have to focus on keeping families together, and that's really the focus that I'm going to have today. So we're going to first talk about family-centered practice. So family-centered practice is a theoretical framework that informs practice with families involved with the child welfare system. It's a family-centered approach, and it's a way of working in partnership. Now, sometimes that kind of is not the way we do things with DHHS. It's a partnership with families to better understand their circumstances and to help parents decide what strategies work best with their children and families. So in a family-centered approach, family members, not the practitioner, decide what constitutes a family. So does that bring up any concerns for you, even like when we think about a legal setting, when we talk about who decides who's the family? Like, what does the court say about who's the family? Anybody want to answer?
Blood relatives?
For sure. But maybe way before we get to that court situation, the family can say, kinship, neighbors, they can surround themselves with people that are important to them that can count as family, right? And then it just becomes a problem if we have to go to court. Would you all agree? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so a family-centered approach is a way of working in partnership with families to better understand circumstances and to help parents decide what strategies would work best and suit their family and children. And so when we recognize, and this is important, for schools too, because the centrality of the family is the lives of the individual, and even looking at the community, the focus is on the family and the strengths of the family and their capabilities. I got to advance my slides here. So a family-centered practice is a set of principles that guide assessment and our intervention when working with families, especially families that have been identified as at risk with children that could possibly be maltreated. So family-centered practice provides direction regarding how to form a professional relationship. Sorry, people still want to be admitted. So how do we form that professional relationship? How do you go out and start working with a family? And is it different with foster care and CPS and family preservation? Everybody kind of has a different role, right? Would you say partnership is a little bit different if you're working with an involuntary client in the role of like CPS, foster care, family preservation?
the rules might be different, but the thing I think is most important is how you engage that family from that first meeting that you have, whether it's CPS, foster care, family preservation. Your engagement can really set the tone for every other interaction in the future.
Thank you, John, and it's great to see you. Exactly. Exactly. Really, and I would even go back to whether the person comes to the office or calls the office, that first meeting sets a tone for every interaction you're going to have with that family. And I guess I'll go back to my PS days. That can start the whole tone. And I don't mean to pick on like brand new workers, because sometimes, they're getting to learn how to engage with families, but sometimes they come off a little too heavy-handed, I'll say, with families. And sometimes it really sets the tone that negatively. So when we want to have a family-centered approach, we want to be active listening, we want to be sensitive, we want to be responsive to personal and cultural values. And when I can give kind of an example of cultural values, I remember as a CPS worker, I had a family that I worked with, and they were Arabic descent, and I opened up the case for, I believe it was for physical discipline, but it was high risk, but I was providing the services, but I had to visit them weekly. And for whatever reason, I went I think it was every Friday, I believe. And I knew the family had limited resources and they didn't speak a lot of English, but I went, I think it was either, I don't know, Thursday or Friday, and they were going to have a relative there to help interpret for me. And I knew at that time, I'm going to date myself, they were receiving food stamps, but they viewed me as like an important visitor coming to their home. Now I knew they were getting food stamps. So they made this massive meal every time I was coming. And they insisted that I eat with them. And it's like, no, I don't want to eat your food. I'd say too fat, I got a diet, whatever. But, they had all these family members bringing out these massive trays of food. And culturally, they looked at me as a welcome guest because I was helping them. But how do you respond to people who you don't want to offend them because they're offering you the coffee or they're offering you a meal, but you don't want to offend them, but you don't want to partake? Anybody have any suggestions? I'll just say what I did. I finally had to mix it up and go unannounced so that they couldn't prepare for me, because I felt terribly guilty that they were using their food stamps to feed me. And the same thing when you go to somebody's house and they want you to take your shoes off. What do? I ended up I try to respect. I'm going in somebody's house. If they want me to take their shoes off, then that's what I do. I take my shoes off because you're entering their home. That's their environment. Right. And then we also need to acknowledge their individual needs. And when we're designing a program, service agreement, we need to think about the different things that they need. So in family-centered practice, the family unit remains the focus of attention. So some people might say, yeah, but if we're in CPS, isn't the child who's at risk our attention? But remember, the child at risk is our unit of attention, but our ultimate goal is to keep that family together and to keep that child whenever we can, when that child can be safe in that family. So practitioners need to be committed to engage and preserve the family whenever possible. So in child welfare, every attempt is made to protect children from maltreatment and the least restriction on the rights of families and parents. So family-centered practice epitomizes an approach that can successfully consider, support, and preserve the rights of both children and families. So why is it important? As I said before, family is the basic institution in the community, and it's the primary group in which members are born, brought up, formed and trained and socialized to play in various roles and functions in the community. Let's see, anyone have any questions as I move along on slides? Okay, so other beliefs and practices that are associated with a family-centered approach, mutual trust. Now, I caution putting that as a bullet point because I'm thinking with caseworkers and families, especially involuntary families, it may be hard to have mutual trust. But I'm going to date myself and go back to, and I'm sure John remembers when we first had established family to family. And I know John was instrumental in establishing that in Oakland County. And we had Gino Gonzalez come and help us. And I know he had already had it up and running in Wayne County, but I always remember a phrase he used that was nothing about me without me. And prior to that, and I'm old enough to say I was doing CPS prior to that, we used to kind of just, it was a horrible approach, but we used to just sneak up on families and a lot of times not even tell them that we were going to court and getting an order to remove their kids. Or in Wayne County, I know what they did. In fact, sometimes I think I was even part of it. We would call the police and ask them to go get an order to remove the kids, or the police would just get an order and remove the kids. And so how can you have mutual trust with a client if you don't even tell them what's going on? So that's why I've always been such a supporter of family to family. And I know we've changed the names lots and we do different things, but if we're going to have family-centered practice, we have to have mutual trust. Nothing about me without me. We have to talk to our families. And even if we are delivering news that they may not want to hear, because ultimately, in order to keep their children safe, the news is we have to go to court, or policy requires we have to go to court. We are sharing the news and telling them what's going on. And that's the same thing about respect. We're sharing, we're being open and honest and having that open communication. So why is family-centered practice important? In child welfare, we make every attempt to protect children from maltreatment with the least restriction on the rights of families and parents. Family-centered practice epitomizes an approach that can successfully consider, support, and preserve the rights of both children and families. But we want to develop a relationship with parents and service providers that is, like I've already said, is characterized by mutual trust, respect, honesty, and open communication. So when we have those individualized services, I was always a big proponent that we don't want to have cookie cutter service plans. And what do I mean by that? You know, a lot of times every family gets referred to parenting classes. And I'm not going to say that every family maybe doesn't need services or parenting classes, but there may be some other important service that a family needs. So we need to really openly and honestly look at what families need. And there's really, to be fair to families, we need to make sure that we're culturally respectful, we're flexible, and we're looking at relevant services for families. So how do we convey a message of respect? First of all, we need to look at the stigmatizing language we use when we speak with others. And over my career, I've had the opportunity as a supervisor to read many reports. And I'll just say, over my years, I've read reports where children were referred to as fat, redheaded stepchild, retarded, nappy-headed little boy. I mean, I don't know how people can put this in reports. I had a worker, and my students, I've shared this in class, so they've heard this story, but I had a worker once just say that they were opening up a case because the house was dirty. And this was before we had iPhones, and they were opening it, I think, as a category 3. And so I said, so-and-so, this was before we could have pictures, and they really didn't do a good job of describing the house. And so I said, so-and-so, what do you mean by dirty house? This is significant that you open up the case. What do you mean? And the worker said, well, there's crumbs on the counter and they didn't sweep behind the refrigerator. And I said, oh, okay, you can never come to my house and visit then if you're gonna impose your values on this client. And I'm not saying that I keep a dirty house, but we have to look at the language that we're using. And I'm gonna give kudos to Dr. Johns, because when I was talking about my presentation and I shared, the stigmatizing language, she shared a couple articles, and they are in this PowerPoint that you'll be able to see. And she said, oh, you should look at these new articles that I'm looking at. And so I did kind of honestly quickly review them, but they're in the medical journals. And they are a couple studies that doctors have just recently done. They're brand new articles about the stigmatizing language that physicians use. And so maybe this will bring it closer to your heart and home. When you think about, because we all go to the doctor, and most of us are kind of, I don't know, I'll say some of us may be nervous when we go to the doctor, and we worry about, like, I don't know if you've ever requested your medical reports, but think about maybe what a doctor might say about you. And sometimes doctors say things that, just because you didn't comply with your diet or your medical regimen, the doctor says that you were non-compliant. They use negative language, and they question your credibility. They express disapproval in your reasoning or your self-care, or they stereotype you by your race or social class, or portray you as being difficult. Where on the other hand, maybe a physician is going to say that they use explicit language and compliment you and show approval, or minimize the blame about the way you're taking care of yourself. So put yourself as a patient and compare yourself to maybe how some of our clients may feel, because that puts us in this power struggle when we go to the doctor, and how we feel, or, the issues of power. And be mindful of the power and authority that you have as a caseworker. Most of the time, at least for CPS, you're dealing with involuntary clients. We don't have that many clients that call and say, I need help. Most of the time we're going because someone called on them. And there is a power dynamic. One of the other references that I have is from Dr. Cynthia Leitz. And so for those of you who are supervisors, you've had the pleasure of, working with Dr. Takesha LaShore on some of the work that Dr. Leitz has done. And she also completed a study with mixed methods. I'm not going to go into all the details because we're not here for an MSW, but she did a study on family preservation services, looking at the effectiveness of services. And some parents noted positive collaborative relationships with service providers, but some parents said there was definitely a power imbalance, and they had very unpleasant reactions to services. And this is a quote from some of the parents. Instead of coming over and being like a babysitter, like making sure that you're doing this or doing that, maybe just trying to help instead of being like a police officer. Maybe you do things to help me, which I thought was kind of interesting, that that's how some parents feel. And I know that there is a balance, because we always got to think about child safety, but I'll just go back to, it's kind of like the approach we use and how we deliver the message, which is basically what John said. So when we think about power within the family system, and we can think about different dynamics, whether it's domestic violence, whether, there is truly a child being abused. There is power, and it's relative. It's also very complex, and it's difficult to quantify. One individual may have more or less power than other individuals. And so when we are assessing a family, there's one important question, and that's whether or not the balance of power as perceived by each individual is adequate and fair. So it's also important to consider what role the children play because they have power. Has anybody ever had a case where the children have threatened the parents to call protective services on them for maybe unfair discipline when really it was within the parents' parental rights to discipline? I can honestly say when I did CPS, okay, when I was a CPS worker in Macomb County, I had a child that actually like used makeup and gave herself a black eye supposedly, and then had the school. Monica called CPS and said the girl said the dad hit her. She's got a black eye. We got all the way to court. The dad just kept insisting he had not done it, and then the dad said, "Make the girl wash her face." She ended up in I forgot what they called the children's village in Macomb County, but children's shelter. She was there, and they made her wash her face, and she did not have a bruise. So sometimes that power differential is where the child may have the power. And I don't remember what it was over, but we sometimes have kids who exert power over their parents and vice versa. Or sometimes the parents don't want to take power and they want the kids to be the parent, which is unfortunate as well. And that's where we have the neglect cases. So think about issues of power and control. I know I can speak for those of you who are within the department. Those who hold power are generally reluctant to give up that power. So think about different policies and management directive letters that have come out within the agency. How do you sometimes feel when those are delivered to you? I know you might not want to share since this is being recorded, but sometimes those who hold power have greater access to resources than people with less power. So I think especially those who have money generally have more access to legal services, education, and healthcare. Sometimes I don't think it's any secret that a lot of the families that we serve don't actually have like a regular pediatrician or a doctor that they can contact. And they are more likely going to get reported for child abuse and neglect because they do most of their medical care in the emergency room, which means then they get reported for lack of medical care or suspicion about the way they're caring for their child. Whereas affluent families sometimes get their concerns about abuse or neglect hidden under the rug because they have the resources to hide it. So resources in general, including power, we all know are not evenly distributed. Conflict between people and institutions are inevitable. I know it's no secret within the department, lots of times we have conflict and disagreement. You must have power in order to change existing organizations and institutions. I can think of over the years, just even when I was a worker, different situations. One that comes to mind way back a long time ago was it used to be like even before the children's rights lawsuit, which takes us way back to 2006. I had a supervisor who did not believe in workers going out together. She thought that meant that workers were going to go out in the field together and not see kids and be out doing whatever they do that was not related to child welfare. So it was interesting, though, she had never done child protective services. I think she had a degree maybe like in art or something. And she didn't know that there really could be safety issues. So this was in the 90s. So yes, I am old. Does anybody recall Lisa's Law and why that came into law? Does anybody know the history of that?
That was
Lisa-
the worker that ended up getting killed by a mother and her sister while she was out on a home visit, right?
Yes. And you know
I
what the-
actually worked in the prison with the Varellin sisters, so that's who they were, the Varellins.
Okay, yes. And you know what the sad thing was? It was in Macomb County in 1998. Lisa Putman, she was, the court had just asked her to go out, as I recall, to check on the house to see if the mother had cleaned up the house so the kids could be returned. There should have been no red flags about this case. And I'm not trying to scare people who don't know about it, but it really, there was nothing that should have indicated that this was a problem case. And these two sisters, as I think it was Kristen indicated, they killed this young woman. It was a horrible tragedy in 1998, but it really did change the face of the way child welfare workers operate. Now we have to have criminal clearances run, and you can go out in pairs. But before that, I had the supervisor who just said, no, I don't want workers going out together because they're just going to be out messing around, not doing the work. But that supervisor had never been a child welfare worker. And so I thought, I was kind of a renegade when I was a CPS worker. And I just to kind of test her, I said, hey, so-and-so, would you go in the field with me? I need, I would like your opinion on this case. And I laughed because she said, oh, I can't possibly go in the field with you. I have preschool children. It would not be safe. And I laughed because at the time I had a 6-month-old baby. And it's like, oh, you can't go with me because you have preschool children, but I have a 6-month-old baby. So organizational power. And what about today at the agency? I have to honestly say, I feel for you because I know that there's lots of changes probably within each of your offices that you may not necessarily agree with, but somehow you have to find a way to work within those rules because you need your job. Anybody want to share anything about how you deal with issues of power and control, support each other?
Nancy, you do have one comment by Kristen Winter in the chat.
Okay.
Do you want me to read it to you or do you have
Yeah,
it?
please do, because I'm not, John knows I'm not very good at technology.
As a matter of fact, Kristen, do you want to unmute and share your experience?
Yeah, I can. So I previously worked foster care. Now I am a team leader in FRP, and just like for that safety issue, since learning about what happened to Lisa, I make sure for all of our initial appointments that I go out there with my family worker, and we present it as the families of like, hey, we work as a team and we just want to make sure we're on the same page with getting this initial paperwork done. We each explain our role. And but I mean, with the initial visit, you never know where you're going, what kind of neighborhood they live in. You don't know who all is gonna be there. And it's just that safety thing of being in numbers. And then if there's like something that is a safety risk or something that needs to be, confrontation is a weird word that I don't want to use with that, but like more like where you're giving them more of firm redirection, I like to make sure that I have at least the family worker there with me while we have that conversation, if not the referring foster care worker on the case, like, hey, we're having this issue. Can you come out to the home so that we can address it together? Because one, it shows the family that we're all working together, but it also just increases like our safety of, hey, we're not going to end up chopped up in a bathtub.
Exactly. And I appreciate that because I think safety in numbers helps. And even in probably the times you guys are in right now with, I know that there's a high issue with retention. Safety is number one. And I think that demonstrates to everyone that you're all on the same page and teamwork is very, very important. So thank you for sharing. Does anyone else want to share? Okay, let's talk a little bit about clients. So, and this is really about advocacy. So we need to help clients whenever possible to help themselves. That's the most important thing. And we know that clients both influence and are influenced by their environment. I think about the Flint water crisis and everything that's going on with that. But, you know, remember that it was just one lone pediatrician and one lone mother that kept taking her baby back to that pediatrician and saying, something is wrong with my baby. And that pediatrician that took a stand and said, this is not right. And she kept saying something was not right, that got that whole crisis opened up. And think what would have happened if that whole tragedy would have gotten swept under the rug. So it's very important that we help clients influence and take a stand. But advocacy should never be carried out without the full knowledge and consent of the client. So as far as advocacy, and I go back to the children's rights, whatever you want to call it, I think it's still called the ISEP today. We need to help clients identify all available resources. I think about when the Section 8 housing certificates are available, you know, there's such a short window, and I know people are just really still struggling to find housing, but we can link people with resources. I used to say when I was a supervisor and a section manager that every client's life we touch, they should have a referral to some type of services when we leave their life. And even if we find absolutely no evidence in that client's life, we should still be able to hook them up with some resources so that they're better off. You know, the fact that we touched their life, we invaded their family, we should be able to link them with resources, because you never know when you're going to need a call to legal aid, early education. Different resources are available, and not everybody is aware of those resources. And clients have rights, and they should also know rights of appeal. So any questions about advocacy or rights of clients? I even think about difficulties with landlords, and a lot of clients aren't aware of the fact that when they're fighting with a landlord, it doesn't mean that they don't have to pay their rent, but they could put their rent in escrow while they're fighting with the landlord. And I know that the district courts are all backed up right now and that they don't want to get evicted, but they also don't want to live in a situation that's unsafe or unhealthy for their children. Okay.
I just wanted to say one thing, Nancy, about clients. And when you're talking about wanting to help them learn how to help themselves or be an advocate or advocate for them, another key is building those bridges, reconnecting with maybe family or friends that they've burned bridges with over the past, to help them reconnect and make those stable again, so that when we step out, not only are we providing them with services, but we're providing them with relationships that they may not otherwise utilize. And when we step away, they have a resource that they can use within their family and their support system and the community that is more beneficial sometimes than the things that we can do with our grassroots services.
Excellent point, John. And, you know, I know you are instrumental in, I'm not sure what we're doing as far as team meetings, but that's especially important when we think about if we have to go to court and looking at family relatives, because really relatives are critical in helping families stay together and be that watchful eye on families to be that support that people in the department just can never be. And of course, family members are going to trust family, and that's that sense of community. So thank you. Excellent point. Okay, so we're going to move on now, and I have this little drawing here. This is a coat of arms, and so we've talked about family-centered practice and some issues of power and control and stigmatizing language. So Next, I want to move on to a reflection about power and control in your coat of arms. And we're going to do a little small group exercise in just a minute, but we're going to reflect about power and control. And as we do this exercise, I want to reflect about the influence we have on children and families that we serve, and the values, and we're going to look at our values and reflect on this and place it in perspective. So we're going to use this coat of arms to kind of represent 5 different things. And that's why I'm using the coat of arms, because it's got 5 different squares. You can draw one on your paper, or I can flip back to that screen in a minute, but I think it's important as caseworkers that we need to take a look at our own values. And so I'm going to share mine, and then in a minute, Dr. Johns is going to put you in groups randomly, and then I'm going to give you about 15 minutes to kind of talk in your group. So you'll be in random groups. Hopefully you'll be able to feel open enough to share, and then we'll come back as a group and talk about it. So we're going to talk about a time in your lives where that some significant event in history touched you personally, a time in your life when you personally experienced or witnessed discrimination, a picture of what it feels like to be poor, a picture of a time you stood up for something you believed in, and then 5, a picture of how you want to be remembered. So with true self-disclosure, I'm going to be open and honest and do it first. And so number 1, a time in your lives that some significant event in history touched you personally. I'm going to really date myself, but I think the most significant thing back in my life was when, or the earliest event I can think of was when JFK was assassinated. And I was a young kid. I was in school. I think I was in 1st grade. And I just remember, we didn't have the news coverage then, but I just remember my teacher was crying. And then when I got home from the bus, my grandparents were at my parents' house because we were supposed to be having a birthday party for my little sister. But my parents and my grandparents were crying, and it was on a Friday. And then there was news coverage all weekend. And I think his funeral might have been on that Monday. But it was just, it was the first time in my life, I think I was 6, that a significant person had been assassinated. And then not long after that, Martin Luther King had been assassinated. My grandparents were very upset about that because they really believed in his status and I Have a Dream speech. And so that just really seemed to touch significant events of important people being assassinated for what they believed in or what they stood for. So that's number 1 for me. Number 2 brings it a lot closer to home as far as a time in your life when you personally experienced or witnessed discrimination. This was actually at work, and I'm not going to name the person, but some of you know this person and you'll probably be able to guess because she's a very good friend of mine. And this was a time in my life when we had a supervisor that didn't believe in us going out in field calls together. So we used to, I'll be honest, we cheated or snuck around. One of us would park our car like at Kmart or somewhere in Madison Heights, and then we would meet up and go together in the field. And so we were going on a call together in Hazel Park, and I just kind of remember that the allegations were that the house was very dirty and the woman had like a lot of kids and she wasn't managing the children. And my good friend is African American. And when we got to the house, we were, rapping on the door like you have to do with CPS several times, and the woman wouldn't open up the door. She finally came out, like, what do you want? Kind of all attitude. And she was Caucasian. So we're trying to like calm her down and like, we don't want to do this out in front of all your neighbors. So she finally calmed down a little bit and she looked at my friend and she said, "You colored, you got to go to the back door. I don't let coloreds in the front door." And then she looked at me and she said, you can come in the front door. And I was just so stunned because this was in the late 90s, early 2000. And I thought, here we are, like, we're coming out to talk to you because your house is filthy dirty and you don't take care of your kids. and you're judging my friend by the color of her skin. I could not believe, say it was 2000, that we're still judging people by the color of their skin. I still have no words for how she treated my friend. I mean, my friend had an MSW. I mean, it's like you're judging. So I was shocked. Number 3, a picture of what it feels like to be poor. I can't say that I like ever have been like, obviously look at me, food insecure or like living on my car, but I decided when I was like 17 that I wanted to go away to college. So I went to college early, and then I ended up like working full time and sharing an apartment with a friend. So I was like money insecure. Money was very tight. I was like directing a daycare center, which is crazy at 19, but it was low pay, and going to Oakland University. So I had like money was tight. I think I had $10 for gas, $10 for food. It was very, very tight budget. So I didn't have money for books one semester, and I basically lived on carbs. So look at me, I'm addicted to carbs, but I lived on ramen noodles and macaroni and cheese with water. So I was able, I respect clients who have to do that at the end of the month or had to. But I didn't have money for books one semester. So I do tell my students this now, that when I went to Oakland University, I learned quickly that the professors will put one of the textbooks on hold at the library. So I went to class early, and I sat in the front and I took notes. And then when class was over, I'd go sit in the library till they closed. And I guess, unfortunately, that's what I felt like I was poor then. And a lot of times I didn't have time for money for gas, but I'm sorry. I'm sure that makes me very middle class, but that's what I remember what it's like to be poor. Number 4, a picture of a time you stood up for something you believed in. Well, I'll just say this got me in trouble a lot when I worked for DHHS. And those of you who worked for me, you may not believe this, but many times I went to bat for my employees, and I got myself in a whole lot of trouble with the powers that be. Because those of you who know me know that I will always say that I cared about child safety and I cared about families, but I didn't care about numbers. I cared about numbers, but not to the extent that I was gonna like move too many cases around or commit fraud. And I argued sometimes with the people above me, and I didn't get to move up the ladder like maybe I would have hoped, but I'm okay with it. And I stood up for what I believed in, and I'm happy with it. So, and I also stood up for clients in court sometimes that probably didn't get me the best reputation, but I did always stand up for what I believed in. And then lastly, a picture of how you want to be remembered. I hope I'm always remembered for being fair and doing what is honest. And whether that is at DHHS and standing up for child safety, or now at the university, trying to be fair and with students who are struggling or students who are doing a good job, just trying to be fair and loyal. So that's my full disclosure. So does anyone have any questions before I ask Dr. Johns to break us out into breakout groups? Okay, so it's 2:00 now. I'm gonna give you guys about 15 minutes to do this breakout groups, and then we'll come together. Maybe in your groups you can, I'm not going to ask everybody to go through all 5, but maybe you can share as you feel comfortable, and then appoint one person to be your spokesperson, and then that person can maybe just share if you discovered anything interesting that you'd like to share, and we'll get back together in about 15-20 minutes. Okay, thank you.
All right, that sounds good. I'm gonna go ahead and open up the breakout rooms. I did put the questions or reflection statements here for you to consider when you get to your breakout. You can also take a screenshot of the.
Thank you.
Mhm. I'll open the breakout rooms now.
I do have a question.
Okay,
Where on your coat of arms, where are we supposed to put the different answers within your coat of arms? 'Cause
Wherever you
did-
want, wherever you
Okay.
want. I'm not a stickler, whatever you feel.
Okay, I didn't remember you saying which area each of the answers went in, so I was just.
Yeah,
wondering.
wherever you can fit it, to be honest with you.
Okay. Can you also put that back up so we can see that when we get a chance?
Sure.
Dawn. Thank you.
okay, breakout rooms are opening now.
And the demands. Commitment to respecting human dignity demands practitioners to remain non-judgmental. So what do I mean by that? You know, it's in this work, it is very, very difficult to be judgmental or to become judgmental. And that is easy for me to say, because I used to say I had seen it all, and I've seen probably the worst of the worst. And having been on numerous committees, you know, dealing with human trafficking, going to child death review every month, I used to always say I've seen it all. And towards the end, I quit saying that because just the human atrocities that I had seen, and I'm sure, you know, I've been gone 3 years now, and I know it doesn't get easier now. But as a practicing ethical caseworker, you should have no interest in judging the client or the client's story, because judging involves making a legal decision about guilt or innocence. Let the court do that. Your job is to hear their story and build on their strengths. But I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, well, wait a minute, if you accept them, then you're saying it's okay, but it's totally different. Acceptance is not the same as approval. You can hear their story, but it doesn't mean you approve what they're doing. So does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, so I do have the right video clip for the other one, and this one is from the Removed series. And I know some of you probably watched Removed Part 1. I think you used to have to watch it before you could get hired in with the state, but this is Removed Part 2. And we're going to watch this, and then we're going to come back together and just have some closing comments. So before we start, does anyone have any questions? I think this is lengthy. It's, I forgot, 22 or 27 minutes. So sit back and watch, and then we'll come together and I'll try to pull all this together for you. The picture will come up in just a minute.
Nancy, I think we have a little trouble with the audio.
Okay, try to turn it up a little bit.
Yeah, or do you know how to share like if you click on share screen, you can share your audio from your computer?
I just turned it up. Did that help? Did that help?
No, it's still pretty low. You have to, let me see. If you want, I have your slides. I can probably pull it up and
Oh,
share the
sorry.
video. No, it's fine. I can do it. Nancy, if you stop sharing, then I can pull it up. Okay, one moment. Nancy, do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
You don't remember my story. All you can think about is your own story. You cannot heal me. You're not a healer. You cannot save me or hide me. This is my story. I have to make peace with it. Once upon a time, there was a girl who was being torn apart. In between the homes, she learned not to trust, to always have her guard up.
In what ways have you maintained a parent and child relationship?
I love them. The issue at this hearing is not whether or not you love your children or if they love you. The issue is, at this point, if you have a parent-child relationship with your children and if it will bring them harm for that legal relationship to be terminated.
Ms. Locke, do you understand the purpose of this hearing?
Yes.
So you understand that this hearing is to terminate your parental rights. Do you understand that if the judge terminates them, you will no longer be the legal mother of your children?
Yes.
Sometimes my life feels like a circle, a never-ending, ongoing cycle. But I don't know how to stop it. Or change it, or break it. When I finally come close, it starts all over again. A whirlwind, a tornado, set out destroy me. Hi.
Hi. You know, I think I'll be another 15 minutes.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Sometimes things begin to get better. Once upon a time, there was an astronaut, and she was stuck in space because she lost her rocket ship. And she didn't know how to get back to Earth. Life falls into a new rhythm. Where did it go? Under your shirt. You're so smart. A new normal. If you went through the atmosphere, that's a big word. Can you say atmosphere? Atmosphere. Nice. And it may not be the best. But I've made peace with it. What's that? A truck?
That's cool.
Does
Look
it
at that.
And it feels like almost I might be happy. What did she do? Look at the stars up there, Messiah. Maybe I can write my own story. Start from scratch. Forget all the past.
Oh, great. What's this one about?
Oh, this one's a tornado.
Did you know there are tornadoes in outer space? That's actually how stars are born. All right, Zoe. We have a visit with your mom today. Let's go pick up your brother.
But then, of course, someone else makes a choice and leaves me alone to figure it out.
Now remember, this is your last visit with Benaya.
Isn't there anything I can do to change it?
You need to prove that you're taking steps to get your life back together.
I know. Okay, my life doesn't have to be this way.
Too hard. Too hard? Want me to help you? Now try. Good. Now you want to do the other one?
Okay.
Put your cup down and help me take my socks off. Good job.
Hey, kiddo. Hey, darling. I got an airplane. He likes airplanes, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Honey, just let me hug you goodbye. Can I please hug you goodbye?
Zoe, we have some guests coming over this evening.
Come on. Tell her. You gotta get in the rocket ship.
Get a response?
Yeah, heard you. You get in the rocket ship for me?
No. Thank you so much for letting us come on short notice.
That's okay. Come right in. Hi.
This is Emily and
Hi.
David Alvarez.
Hi, nice to meet you.
They're very excited to meet Benaya.
Oh, that's great. I don't think this is going to be the best thing for Zoe. Because she can't handle him being taken away from her again.
They'll have bi-weekly visits indefinitely, and I know it's not ideal.
I'll go get him. Find your sleeves. There you go. Your muscles. Oh. Let me see your muscles, Benaya. Yes. Well, people for you to meet. This is Miss Emily.
Hi.
How you doing?
Hi.
We have something for you. Do you want to open it?
Ooh, what do you?
Oh, you're a spaceman. That's
like
pretty cool,
space.
Benaya.
His room is actually decorated and.
Yeah, we'll make sure to keep that in mind.
Oh, where's Kyra?
Hey, she had to leave early.
Oh. Benaya! 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 Benaya!
Zoe.
Benaya!
Zoe, wait. Zoe. No, listen. Zoe, it happened so quickly they wouldn't let me tell you.
When I finally come close, it starts all over again.
What are you working on in school?
Homework?
Do you still like to draw? I always liked your drawings. I love you, you know? Hey, I love you. And I'm gonna fight to get Benaya back. My mom never fought for us, but I'm gonna fight for him.
What about me? Don't you want me to?
Of course. You're not a kid anymore. You're all grown up.
When I close my eyes and see my life, the life I always imagined, I see something different than what I see now. All your fault! It's all your fault! It's all your fault! All your fault! All your fault!
Zoe.
No! Ah! No!
She may have some negative side effects to it, but this will help with moments of uncontrollable anger. I really believe this will make life easier.
Zoe doesn't need meds. She needs more therapy. She needs more interaction with her mom.
You see what I do, but forget why.
you'll still get a chance to see him. Hopefully twice a month, maybe even more. I've already set up a play date for this weekend.
Why do they think they can just have him? They aren't his parents.
If it doesn't work, we can always up the dosage or add a second medicine to it to help you feel a little less sad or angry.
But why wouldn't you?
You forget what I've heard. You forget my pain.
Well, the courts have said that your mom has
what?
to.
I'm not good enough for them?
That's not it at all, Zoe.
Then what? I explode inside. Sometimes slowly. Sometimes all at once. I hate you! But always, eventually.
What are you reading?
The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, yeah? Is it good?
Yeah. It's better than the movie. In the book, Oz is a real place. It's not just in her dream. Tornado catches her up, and it takes her away to a real place.
Is that you?
No. She's trying to escape. But the tornado keeps pulling her back in. She keeps spinning and spinning.
It's not always about escaping, though. Sometimes you have to learn how to survive inside of it. There you are. Right in the middle of all that spinning, you can let that tornado rip apart your heart, or you choose how to let what has happened to you affect you. Your mom's story doesn't have to be your story. Your future can be different. Remember that. And remember what happens tomorrow. We get a chance to visit Benaya.
So, guess what? Did you know that space tornadoes are actually real? That's us up there. When stars being born, it only comes out of a tornado. It's high winds. They're super dangerous. They're hard to survive. But at the end, a star's left. In the middle of all that, that's you and me, buddy. Yeah, we're stars. Yeah, isn't that cool? We're stars.
Zoe, you wrote this in your diary. Sometimes someone hurts you so bad, it stops hurting at all. Honey, what were you talking about when you wrote that? If you were to go home to live with your mom right now, would you be safe?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for speculation.
Objection sustained.
Once upon a time, there was a girl who was being torn apart.
Do we have a consul here today?
No, Your Honor.
Maybe you never thought your path would cross these valleys or be led up these mountains.
Miss Locke, you have made considerable efforts. However, what you
But no one can break the inside of me,
Zoe cannot continue to wait.
and no one can tell me who I will be.
She needs a permanent, safe, and loving home. I find that this is in Zoe's best interest. So today,
And the question looms. And you have the choice. Where to go next. We are stars. Born of fire, wind, born into the chaos. And the winds whip around us. And no one stays with us.
Eduardo, can you stay a second so I can talk to you?
Everything we know was taken away.
I know it can be hard when you're living in a home that's not your own. Hard to concentrate and stuff.
But one day,
You don't have to draw. Just remember that you get to decide who you want to be, okay? No one else can do that.
one day. Thanks, Miss Zoe. We will shine.
Okay, let's see. I think you can hear me. Thanks. I saw a lot of comments in the chat. I just saw John's. He said that makes him think of his removal. I know some of you have seen it before, and I'm sorry if I'm repeating. I wanted to share that because it is, I think it's very impactful, especially because I don't think especially as CPS workers, we always think about the long-term effects of, this is just another kid, this is just another petition, but where are we going with it? And so I don't know, maybe some of you have not seen the first video called Removed. Hopefully you have. And now there's another one titled, I think it's called Remove Part 3, which is also very impactful. Does anyone have any comments that they want to share?
Hi, Nancy, this is Nicole. I just really think this is the first time I saw this video, and it was just very powerful. And it just really makes you think about, you know, why it's so important that we need to think about the children, their feelings, being able to engage with them, find out what their wants and their needs are, because they're going through a lot. And that was just, that video just, you know, it just make you think about all the different removals that we may have done throughout our time with the state, and just really makes you think. It was a very, very powerful video.
Thank you, Nicole. And then too, and it also just brought it home to me about, you know, you see the struggles that Zoe went through, and then, you know, the rage that she had, and they're just so quick to medicate her, and it just like, nobody seemed to be listening. So, and then, you know, I know we have talked many times about we didn't want kids moving their stuff in garbage bags, and, you know, in a literal sense, that's how they felt. So yeah, I know somebody else put in the chat that they show that at the, what used to be called the Pride training. And I think it is powerful for foster care parents to see this, but I just really feel like all child welfare workers should see it. And if you haven't seen the first one, Remove Part 1, there were little clips of Part 1 in that video, and then Remove Part 3 is out too. So did anyone else have any comments that they wanted to share? I mean, I guess I just wanted to share that because I think when we think about child safety and permanency planning, these are people's kids we're talking about, and families, and it just, I feel like that video really brings it home. So now, even though we're gonna go to concluding remarks, and on one of the breaks, I was talking to Latasha, and she told, Latasha Kolchak told me from North that it looks like maybe by May, I don't know if you guys want this or not, but maybe by May, you'll be actually going back to the office on a more regular basis, which for the newer staff, that's probably a good thing. And so for my concluding remarks, I just want to again reiterate that I just have the utmost respect for you, that this is very, very difficult work that you do. And I don't think you can discount the work that you're doing. And the first thing I want to emphasize is teamwork. And so for those of you who are newer and maybe haven't even been in the office due to the pandemic, when you get back to the office, getting in just with the camaraderie is just so important. And I just say, please respect each other and work as a team. It's just, this work is just really too hard. And in my career, I just saw so many people working with each other to support each other. And the work is just too difficult. I can't say that enough. And I just saw a comment of someone pop up that they wanted to get a copy of the video, and it is in my reference list, and my email is also on the PowerPoint that you can get a copy of it, and I'll be happy to share with everyone. And I'll also, before I forget, since I gave you the wrong video for Jasmine Awa about motivational interviewing, the correct link is in my PowerPoint, but I'll be happy to email that to you too. And I'm so sorry. We were struggling last night at the end to make the sound quality better, and I won't add anymore. My husband's just helpful, but we put the wrong link in. So my second concluding remark, and those of you who have worked for me, probably know you're not going to be surprised by this, but I can't say it enough. And like I have said, being a worker, a supervisor, and a section manager, you have to protect yourself and protect the children. And I always used to say, if you don't do anything else, you've got to see the children. And you've got to protect yourself by seeing the children. And many of you know who work for me that whenever we had like a serious physical injury or a child death, we usually found out about it after Lansing found out about it, because centralized intake notifies Lansing first. It's an automatic email to Lansing and to Seth Persky. And they're looking at your case before we know about it. And everyone knows what happens if they pull up that case and there are no social work contacts in there. So you've got to make sure you see the children. And I know that things are probably very, very busy and you might not be able to put all your contacts in. But at least if you have a contact in there that you've seen the children, you document child safety and you're protecting yourself. I can't stress that enough about how important it is to see the children. This whole presentation is about child safety, and over my career, yes, I was called Killer Keller, and yes, I was known for walking a lot of people out the door, but a lot of the people that got walked out the door were the ones not seeing the kids. And some of you are going to laugh because I used to say a lot of times that this work is too hard, and if you don't want to see the kids, then this is not the work to be in. But it's very true that if you don't have a passion for caring about kids, this is not the work to be in. You don't have to be maybe as passionate as I am, but you have to care about child safety. It's just so important. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, then that's when you got to talk to your supervisor or your team and work together as a team to figure out how you're going to document child safety, which leads me to number 3, document, document, document. And that goes for not only workers and specialists, but also supervisors. That's how you protect yourself too, that you met with the worker and you gave them instruction. And which leads me to number 4, consult with your supervisor. And I know the supervisors, I think in Oakland, Macomb, and Wayne all had an incredible opportunity that Dr. Cynthia Leitz was brought in to provide some additional supervisory training, which I had the opportunity to have that and some other training with her. And she knows child welfare better than anybody I know. And hopefully you've taken advantage of the strategies that she's provided. But supervision is critical. And I, had another, I'm known for a lot of little phrases, but I had another phrase, which I used to say, no drive-bys. And that used to be when I'd walk the hall and I'd have a worker or sometimes even a supervisor, hey, can I run something by you? And I used to call those no drive-bys, because there's nothing that replaces somebody just stopping you somewhere and asking you a quick question. And no disrespect to anyone, but that generally means that they don't really want the answer that you're going to give them. And that generally means that they don't really want to consult with you on the case. And then they're going to go back and say, Nancy Keller said A, B, and C, which if you're not sitting in front of your computer to document what you said, I'm old, I'm forgetful, that's generally a problem. So even though for supervisors, whether CPS or foster care, it takes a lot of time to document, that's your best safety for yourself, that you sat down and met with, I'm going to pick on Olivia because I see her name. I met with Olivia and these are the cases we talked about. And these were the instructions I provided. That's how you provide safety for the child, safety for the worker, and safety for yourself. And as a supervisor, you should be providing clinical supervision and direction, because you're the one that knows the policy. And if you don't know the policy, then that's when you go to the worker or the section manager or above and talk with them. And I do hope that they are providing that direction for you, because it's all about keeping children safe, keeping families together. And, that's the work that this is all about. And then the last one, with my concluding remarks, which I will now say I believe is the most important, is practice self-care. And for those of you who are clinical social workers or studying or, working on your license, you know that last July, the NASW Code of Ethics actually changed, and self-care actually became a part of our Code of Ethics. So it's no longer this little flowery thing that we talk about, and it's good to practice self-care, go take the weekend off and watch Netflix, or sleep in, or go get your nails done, or take a nice long bath, or take a walk, do whatever you do that brings you joy and helps you feel better. But now it is actually part of the Code of Ethics. And I really can't stress it enough that whether you're working too much on call or you're just working too much, I used to have supervisors always come to me, and sometimes they would be mad at upper management for rules that were passed down, and they would just say, look, I'm not taking my computer home anymore. I'm not working at night. And I know it's different now because you all work from home, but you got to find a way to cut the cord and take care of yourselves. And it's like the old adage, when you're on the plane, you got to put the oxygen mask on yourself first, because if you can't take care of yourself and feel better about yourself, you're really not going to be good to first of all, to yourself and your family and people you care about, but to your staff, or to do a good job. And, I know you don't have probably much time to worry about health related things and TV and the news and stuff, but there's so many documented things now out in the news that say, sitting in front of a computer and not getting proper sleep are as bad for your body as smoking is. So I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but you really, if other than many other things I've said today, please take away that practice self-care. Take care of yourself. I know Western Wayne, you've lost some important people in the last year, and with the pandemic, we've all lost people that we love and care about, but I really hope that that's another message that you take today, that it's just so important to take care of yourself. This is very, very difficult work, and I hope that you leave. I know that things are difficult in most offices, and it's hard with retention, and I hope that there's going to be a hiring blitz. I know Wayne State is getting ready to graduate some very good social workers, and I know things are hopeful, which I know I always used to say, keep hope alive and things, but I do believe that hopefully things are going to get better now that the pandemic hopefully is coming to an end. I will also say, which I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, with Protect the Children, I was in a meeting with Seth Persky, your director of family advocate. He reviews all who he is, he reviews all the child deaths. He made a great point, which I am trying to share his message for him, that when you're also, and he teaches at Wayne State as well, when you're out seeing the children, he did tell me too, that one of the biggest problems with your safety plans, for those of you who are doing safety plans, either foster care or CPS, is that the agency is cited all the time because people aren't talking to the kids. So that goes right along with number 2 about protecting the kids and seeing the kids, but also document that you're talking to the kids about safety, which fits very well with this presentation on child safety. So that's the takeaway. Practice self-care. I know some of you wanted the links to the film, and does anybody have any questions or concerns? And I'll just send a big shout out to Dr. Johns, who helped me with my technical skills with the video. I'm sorry. I'm going to get better at this. So.
I was happy to help, and thank you so much for your presentation and all your knowledge that you shared with all of us today. You can see in the chat, the attendees agree with my thank you to you.
Okay, thank you. And it's great to see so many people.
I'm going to share the post test in the chat now. And then, as I won't have Nancy do it tonight, she needs her mental break. But we will put together the PowerPoint and links to the videos, and then we can send it out. If not tomorrow, next week.
And if anybody wants anything, my email is on the slides too. So please don't hesitate to contact me. And it's great seeing so many people.
It was wonderful, Nancy.
Oh, thank you, Bernice.
Awesome presentation, Nancy.
Oh, thank you.
My team they're texting me now saying this was the best training they had.
Oh, that's so nice. All right. Well, everybody have a wonderful day.
You too.
Thanks.
You too. Bye, Nancy.
Bye.
Hi, Nancy. Great to see you.
Bye, John. Great to see you.
Hi, John. Bye, John. This is Nicole.
Hi.
It's
Parker,
good
you
to
didn't
see
put
you.